Well, greetings, everyone, and welcome to a special online event today called The Healing Potential of Archetypal Astrology. Optimize your timing for exploring non-ordinary states. My name is Stephen Dynett. I'm the founder and CEO of the Shift Network, and I'm really thrilled to be hosting two amazing, iconic men who have been some of the great pioneering minds of our time. One is internationally renowned psychiatrist Stan Grof. He's one of the founders of the field of transpersonal psychology. Just want to welcome you to today, Stan. Stan has been he's spent over 60 years of research into the use of non-ordinary states for healing, exploration, and growth and insights in the human psyche. He was a chief of psychiatric research at the Maryland Psychiatric Research Center. He's authored many groundbreaking books from Psychology of the Future to LSD psychotherapy and Beyond the Brain and the Cosmic Game. A real giant in the field of psychology and really spirituality. So welcome, Stan.
It's a great pleasure.
We also have with us today Richard Tarnas, who is, I will call Rick today for simplicity, but he's a real giant in the field of philosophy. He's the founding director of the graduate program in philosophy, cosmology, and consciousness of California Institute of Integral Studies. Teaches courses in archetypal studies, depth psychology, philosophy, cultural history, and he's authored some fantastic books. One is called The Passion of the Western Mind. Another one, Cosmos and Psyche, Intimations of a New Worldview. And both have received many accolades and awards. And he's also been a real pioneer in bringing the field of archetypal astrology to a much wider audience. So welcome, Rick.
Thank you very much, Steve. Good to see you again. Be here.
Great. Well, I want to say we're going to have this hour with these two amazing men, and today is not the end of the journey. If you choose, we're going to have a whole upcoming advanced intensive with them called Psyche and Cosmos Advanced. And so this is going to be a really groundbreaking, first of its kind opportunity to go deeper into the frontiers of both of these, both of their thinking on how we marry two fields that are very important, the world of psychology and depth psychology and the world of astrology. When we bring these two together in unique ways, a whole new horizon opens up for understanding ourselves and understanding the world. So we'll hear a little bit more about that advanced program towards the end today. So let's begin actually first with you, Stan, since today's subject is about the healing potential of archetypal astrology. What is it that first drew you to see archetypal astrology as a tool to enhance the work you were doing with non-ordinary states?
You know, when I started working with psychedelics, we were using it. It's very, very difficult patients. We wanted to give it to patients where there was no hope with any other more conventional techniques. And so we're desperately looking for some tool that would make it possible to predict what kind of experiences people would have, how they would respond to psychedelic therapy, and also what the outcome will be. So we were using a whole battery of tests. We were using, MMPI, symptom checklist 90, TAT, Rorschach, and so on. And basically, these tools prove to be useless. And it's understandable because they don't even have the versatility. You know, it's known that when you repeat the tests, that you get pretty much the same results. Whereas if you take LSD today and another session 2 weeks from now, it can be completely different. And so way back at SLN, where Rick and I started really looking at LSD psychotherapy when Rick was writing the dissertation, there was a man who came who was really like an archetype of an astrology. He was living astrology, walking around with ephemeris and checking everything that was happening in his life and that was happening in the world. Be sure that the proper correlations with the planetary transits. And he told us, why don't you use astrology? This would be an amazing tool. And we were just about, open-minded enough to try, and we were just astonished that such predictive power. And what happened in this kind of early work is that Rick realized that what I described as the phenomenology of the perinatal matrices, which is what people experience when they relive different stages of birth, were just very, very similar to what you read in handbooks of astrology. Like what I call the first matrix, when the child is the fetus is in the womb, was very Neptunian. The second one, the contractions of the uterus, the compression, the depression, and so on, very Saturnian. The third one was very Plutonic, the death, rebirth, powerful energies, underworld, and so on. And the fourth one, the breaking out, the sudden resolution of a difficult situation, was very Uranian. So that in itself was mind-blowing, because I had no knowledge of astrology. I was just extracting it from people's psychedelic sessions. And then the next stage was a realization that actually people would have significant participation of these archetypes in their sessions at the time when they had the corresponding transits. And so something, that was more controversial than psychedelics suddenly turned out to be what I call Rosetta Stone of consciousness research.
Well, fascinating journey. Rick, I'd love you to build on that and share your own development of insight into how archetypal astrology really could be such a potent tool for transformation.
Yeah, in many ways, what we discovered, and again, it was very much to our amazement, our astonishment, as Stan conveyed, because neither of us had any inkling that astrology had any value at all, let alone this kind of central value to the kind of work and research that we were pursuing at this point. And so first it was discovering that through tracking carefully where the planets were in relationship at any given time, at the time of a person's LSD session, or in later years holotropic breath work, or even just the everyday life of our unfolding experiential life, the qualities of our experience, they seem to track with extraordinary consistency with the movements of the planets in relationship to where the planets were at a person's birth. And so the first thing was basically learning how to track these things, how to calculate our birth charts, how to calculate our transits, and then to gain the interpretive skills that came from really first integrating, many astrological handbooks, textbooks, and so forth. But above all, it was doing the careful research day after day. First with the immediate circle of people who were doing this kind of research at Esalen, and our own case histories, our own life experience, and we had good records of our own LSD sessions, for example. But then it was, after that, we began to look at it in the case of famous individuals, where we had good data about their major turning points, transformational experiences, and so forth. And so what gradually was revealed was that the basic project that has inspired depth psychology from Freud and Jung onward has been the desire to become more conscious of the unconscious. And in that great project, our understanding of the human psyche has expanded radically, first with Freud and his recognition that what we thought was the human psyche really should be seen as a kind of iceberg in which the majority of its contents are below water, below the level of our consciousness. But then with Jung's work, that expanded much more to recognizing the fundamental power of these archetypal forces that he called the archetypes, connecting that both with the ancient understanding of gods and goddesses that was kind of accessed through our human imaginative powers as a way of personifying these primal forces, and then also connecting it with the Platonic tradition where he took the term archetypes from, in which everything that exists in our empirical experience can be seen as a manifestation of more transcendent archetypal principles, so that there are many beautiful things in this world, but there is an archetype of the very principle of beauty that is timeless and beyond space and temporal location, and but is participating in the particular experience or phenomenon. So in doing that, we basically came to see that we had a tool here that, as Stan calls it, a kind of Rosetta Stone of the human psyche, because as Jung himself said, who was also very interested in the study of astrology for this reason, it allows us to see what are the specific archetypal dynamics that are at work at a given time in a person's life, and also what is that person's basic predispositions that last a lifetime, that shape her or his basic sort of personality structure and life experience. The final stage of this was recognizing that this was also a very helpful tool for understanding the collective psyche and major events, historical epochs, and the way that an entire society or era can, in some ways, come within the influence of a particular archetypal gestalt. And so that book that you mentioned in your introduction that I wrote, Cosmos and Psyche, in that I traced carefully various major historical phenomena, events, cultural epochs, and so forth that show the same connection with the planetary cycles that we saw at work at the individual level in deep inner work, inner journeys, and psychological conditions more generally.
Stan, let's go. That's fascinating, Rick. And Stan, let's go back to you. So much of your work, one of the seminal areas of your work is really pioneering the understanding of perinatal psychology and the influence of the birthing process. And so how do you see the work around the importance of birth connecting to the importance of the planetary alignments at birth in determining what kind of experiences we might have?
Well, this was a stage of my research. I was coming from sort of a medical training, psychoanalytic training, so I didn't have any concept of the birth having any significant role in the psyche, and it simply emerged out of that work with psychedelics, where I suddenly saw the powerful representation. And so I kind of embraced it, and then I saw a lot of significant connections, like the stages of birth suddenly seem to parallel there's some kind of major images that come from religions, like the first matrix, being in this beautiful, blissful situation, or like paradises or heavens. And from 1 to 2 was like paradise lost, and the second, where there's no way out, there's no opening in the cervix, and there are these constrictions in a closed system. This matched, the descriptions of hell, sort of suffering without any perspective. And then the third one was like purgatory, suffering with perspective. And then the transition from the third one into the actual birth was like a divine epiphany, sort of connecting with the divine and so on. And then I started seeing connections with, for example, socio-political events, where you have the images that were coming together with the prenatal situation. A good womb was like showing some very peaceful movement into the second matrix was like suddenly slavery coming, or some kind of a, despotic system. And then the third matrix suddenly was associated with images of revolution. Enough of the oppression. We're going to break through. We're going to overthrow the tyrant, and we will all breathe free. And there was similar kind of connection. Suddenly, deeper understanding of art, deeper understanding of history, and so on. So this was like a transitional period where I really grabbed onto it, because I could see there is, whatever psychiatrists or physiologists think, there is a very significant substrate, material substrate. The brain of the newborn, why couldn't it, carry this memory of birth? It actually didn't make any sense that it wouldn't. If like nursing is significant, or even bonding, the exchange of looks between the mother and the child, how would it be possible that the hours of the struggle in the birth canal would not be trauma? So I put a lot of emphasis on that. But as we continued, then this whole other level opened up, which was the level of what Jung calls the collective unconscious. And they were sort of past life experiences, images from the history of humanity, but also excursions into the mythological, into the archetypal world. And then my emphasis really shifted radically from the perinatal matrices to the archetypes. It was much more challenging intellectually, because now we were outside of the realm of matter, outside of a situation where memory has any kind of material substrate. But it became very, very convincing. So today I see the archetypal domain as being superordinated to biology, that what you see in the perinatal stages is actually informed by the archetypal forces. So that when a person has a psychedelic session, it seems like they tune into the archetypal field of the transiting planets. And then depending of, the intensity of the experience, or the number of previous explorations, then you get sample of like biographical experiences that carry that kind of a archetypal quality, or you get the corresponding matrix of birth, or you have the direct experience of those archetypes themselves. So now the way I see it, it's a very, very profound understanding of the psyche. If you combine now this big cartography of the psyche that has not just the postnatal biography, the way it's seen as current psychiatry, psychology, but you add the perinatal level, and you get the transpersonal level, you get much more deeper understanding of emotional psychosomatic problems. And not only deeper, but sometimes you get understanding of areas where there is no understanding in current psychiatry and psychology. For example, the kind of systems of thinking that we have in psychology today have nothing to say. How come there is shamanism? How come there are rites of passage in indigenous cultures? How come there were these ancient mysteries of death and rebirth? What about Buddhism, Hinduism? The mystical systems, to equate it with pathology is just absurd. So the combination of this big archetype, this big psyche, and the amazing input that you get from archetypal astrology just provides a whole other context for understanding of a broad spectrum of phenomena.
Fascinating, Stan. Well, Rick, let's go back to you. And so we're really seeing that birth is a kind of a portal between the individual human psyche and the larger archetypal forces, which makes this nice synergy between Stan's discoveries and archetypal astrology. So let's get practical. So what is it we want to understand about our actual birth chart, and then how does that relate to transits, and how that might affect what's happening in a non-ordinary state of consciousness?
Well, what we have found is that the first thing was looking at sessions and experiences that had already happened, and checking and discovering that there were these correlations. And through that study, getting an increasing grasp of a kind of deeper understanding of the range of ways in which a particular transit from one planet to another in the natal chart can be found, can be expressed in the person's experience. And after we had been doing that a while, I realized that this could also be a very helpful tool for timing of sessions, because there are certain transits that are much more challenging than others. And while all transits, and really all natal, all the things in our birth charts as well, everything has its potential life-enhancing possibilities. Its creative side, its noble potential. Everything has that part of the spectrum. But there are also, particularly with what we call hard aspects, that is, configurations between the planets that involve like the opposition, 180 degrees away from each other, the 90-degree square, and many conjunctions as well. That these, while these are extremely valuable for increasing the kind of energetic, the reservoir of energy that becomes available during a particular session, some of them may be more challenging, particularly for people who are new to a particular form of experiential therapy. And so we've realized that it could be useful for, let's say, looking at a person who is coming with relatively little experience in this area, and they want to dip into it. They want to do these kinds of explorations, and there are certain times that could be much more supportive of a positive unfolding. And while there are other transits that, while they could be very fruitful in the case of a person who had some experience in this area, had integrated a lot of their unconscious material already, they were kind of seasoned navigators of the unconscious psyche. In that case, it could be very fruitful for them to work with certain powerful and demanding, challenging transits. In fact, some things can come up then that might not otherwise surface, when one might not otherwise have the opportunity to, in a sense, expand or deepen your consciousness in that particular way. On the other hand, somebody who is new to this area could find those same transits something that could be overwhelmingly challenging or disorienting, and it would be better to have entered into this modus operandi, enter into using, say, shamanic techniques, sacred medicine journeys, or holotropic breathwork under transits that were more intrinsically likely to bring forth harmonious, flowing experiences that would make it easier for the next time one would dive into the unconscious with some confidence that is based on the initial positive experiences. And that way, as time passes, they could take on do some of the other deeper diving into the more challenging areas of the unconscious, but with greater confidence that there's light at the end of the tunnel, because they've already been imprinted with that positive possibility. So one of the things that we'd like to do in this advanced course is to give many of the specific findings and recommendations for the most skillful timing in different situations for this kind of work.
Fascinating. Well, let's get really specific. Stan, so I know that Saturn connects to your birth perinatal matrix number 2. So maybe let's talk a little bit about why Saturn transits and hard Saturn transits are something that you might want to delay until you're a more seasoned explorer, and some of what you see experientially if there's a hard Saturn transit.
Well, what we see regularly, that people who have significant Saturn, for example, when it's in the chart, in the rising, Capricorn, Saturn in Capricorn rising or something like this, have just many more challenges in psychedelic sessions, because this is something that's related to the no exit, to the second matrix and so on. So if you look at their sessions, there is much more of this kind of struggle. And for those kinds of people, it would be particularly useful if a good astrologer who knows something about non-ordinary state would tell them what would be the best timing for a session where they would have a chance to break through. But again, as Rick is saying, this is not all bad news. I have been living, with the Saturn, Pluto, Uranus in hard aspects all my life, and I think the Saturn was extremely useful. The positive side, which has to do with order, with structure. So I would always, in my sessions and also working with my clients, I would experience some kind of mind-blowing kind of observation that forced me, to just change the old, basically let the old paradigm in my mind go. But there was also sort of like kicking back to the Saturn side, trying to put it into some kind of a bigger container. So I was always going back from breaking through, breaking out, and then creating some kind of new conceptual framework for what I was now seeing. So this, I think Rick could talk better about it. That the Saturn is not necessarily just the great malefic, and so that you would say, if you see that kind of chart, we say, well, bad news. You were just born with Saturn, in a certain kind of position in the chart. So again, as we could say, there's a positive use for any kind of archetype. There's always the bright side and the shadow side.
So Rick, you want to build on that? So what might you want to be attentive to about Saturn in a chart and sort of Saturn transits?
Sure. Yeah. In fact, what I started to say right at the beginning there was, it's not so much that just any Saturn transit or even hard aspect Saturn transit is in itself an indication of, say, having a difficult perinatal experience, second matrix kind of thing, if one was doing sacred medicine work or holotropic breath work. It doesn't work so simplistically as that. In fact, what seems Saturn by itself can range from just everyday obstacles, but also the everyday demands of life to pay the bills, to but also our positive obligations to people, our sense of duty, sense of conscience. Those can be seen both as constraints, but also in their own way as part of the nobility of life. And it's more like in terms of the really difficult perinatal material coming up, that is most frequent when Saturn is in hard aspect to one of the outer planets, and particularly Neptune and Pluto. And the fact that Stan himself is born, as he said, with that the opposition between Saturn and Pluto in a T-square with Uranus. For those of our listeners who are astrologically initiated, they'll recognize what I'm talking about. Born there in the early 1930s, when the whole world was going through a kind of major contraction, collapse of old structures, 1929 through the early 30s. And Stan is a very good example of somebody who, on the one hand, has quite a challenging chart, and he certainly has been through plenty of very demanding experiences in his life, growing up with first the Nazis in Czechoslovakia during World War II, and then the communist takeover in the late 40s and throughout his life there in the 50s and 60s. And so he, and plus his own, many personal experiences, including, I don't know if Stan, you mind me mentioning, but the fact that he as a student, just for a small act of political rebellion against the tyrannical authorities of the communist regime there in the late 40s in Prague, he actually was taken out of school and imprisoned for several weeks, and so this is a person who's been through plenty of highly demanding experiences, including in his own many sessions and helping others through these. But it was precisely that allowed him to be able to make these connections to the larger range of experiences that humankind is heir to, and to help people go through the transformational experiences that the birth process represents a kind of paradigm case of right at the beginning of our lives. Because we all go through a fundamental loss of that which is most important to us, the womb, that which has nourished us and lovingly supported us, and then suddenly that not only is eliminated, it starts contracting on us. It becomes something that is extremely threatening and painful, and then to integrate that experience and discover that was the way to be born. That was the way to come into a whole new dimension of existence, and in some sense recover that which has been lost. In this case, reconnecting with the mother in a whole new way, and then with the wide world that opens up. It becomes a kind of template for future experiences of loss, of death and rebirth, of pain, followed by pain and suffering that turns out to be meaningful, turns out to be serving a larger purpose that we couldn't see beforehand. And that is, in many ways, one of I think the great gifts that Stan's whole orientation to psychology and the human psyche and to psychotherapeutic practice, is that he's been able to bring this much greater depth and breadth of the spiritual and existential life of humanity into a meaningful framework that has a very practical implications, which is what his teachings have been about. And then you bring in the archetypal astrology, and then you have this whole other tool that basically illuminates the what are these different categories of experience that can emerge at different times, and what are my basic predispositions and or ways in which my psyche is structured in certain ways that are unique to me, and unfold with a unique timing, and to get a light shown on those dimensions of our experiences was also a great liberation.
Stan, one of the things that you've also pioneered an understanding of is this whole concept of spiritual emergence, or spiritual emergency, and spiritual crises. So how can archetypal astrology help us get a different framework of understanding for what's underway in that kind of a spiritual crisis, and how do we best navigate it?
Again, that's a great example how you can bring together the research of holotropic states and archetypal psychology. So the fact that we were doing first psychedelic therapy and then holotropic breathwork was that we realized that the psyche is not limited to postnatal biography and to the individual unconscious, the way it's still believed in mainstream psychiatry and psychology, but that there is this major, perinatal domain with the 4 perinatal matrices, and that vast area of the transpersonal, which is greatly overlapping with the Jungian idea of the collective unconscious. So very logical consequence of that was that what you see in a certain very important subgroup of powerful non-ordinary states of consciousness, currently diagnosed as psychosis, is really emergence of these contents of the unconscious from a great depth. And because it's not sort of mapped, it's not accepted, those domains are not accepted by current psychiatry, it's labeled psychotic, it's labeled, seen as pathology, that some kind of pathological process intervened, and in interaction with the brain is created what those people are experiences, where it's nothing else but sort of a manifestation of the deep levels of the unconscious, which are an integral kind of germane part of the psyche. So this is the way the work with holotropic states contributed to the concept of spiritual emergency. Now, when we bring in this archetypal astrology, you can say that, at least I can say that I've never seen any kind of situation that would qualify as spiritual emergency, where there would not be sort of hard aspects of the 4 outer planets. And for people who are in spiritual emergency, this becomes an incredible guidebook, because if they come to a traditional psychiatrist, the message would be that they are mentally ill. They have a serious mental illness, and they might be prepared to, on and off, to be on tranquilizers and so on. Whereas you get a different picture with archetypal astrology, because we correlate it with transits, and transits come at a certain time, they culminate, and then they go away. And you can see, if you look at the future, if there's going to be some kind of a similar dangerous combination coming in the future. So it's an amazing thing for these people to have a roadmap, to realize that there is some kind of law and order. There's something you can understand. It's not like anything can happen at any time and have any kind of content. So that combination of the large map of the psyche, and then archetypal astrology as a guide, as a tool, is just totally changes the whole field of psychiatry, if it is accepted.
Rick, let's go back to you.
People can benefit from spiritual crisis rather than having their personality diminished and reduced.
That's great, Stan. Well, let's go back to you, Rick. And we talked a bit more about Saturn and some of the things to avoid in terms of the, at least for beginners, in terms of the kind of oppressive and sometimes stuck feelings. So let's talk a little bit about the things to look for in terms of positive breakthrough. If you're wanting to engage in non-ordinary experience as a way to open to a new possibility, what are you looking for to help amplify and increase the available energy?
Yeah. So the transits that we have noticed correlate most regularly with times of sudden breakthroughs, usually involve the planet Uranus, which seems to be connected to a kind of this basic principle of sudden awakenings, openings, disruption of the status quo, but also a kind of impulse to push the horizon of one's experience and move beyond the existing paradigm boundary line, so to speak, have experienced sudden insights, sudden freeing up of energies and so forth. And particularly when Uranus combines with Jupiter, for example, which seems to have a more expansive, elevating, supportive influence with respect to whatever other archetype it's connecting with. In this case, this Uranian, breakthrough, sudden shift, kind of paradigm shift, kind of impulse. That combination seems to be especially frequent with sudden breakthroughs, fourth perinatal matrix experiences, and so forth. Now, what if I were giving an entire lecture on this topic, for example, what I would do is go through point by point. First, what are the transiting energies that we find most are most likely to be found in correlation with experiences of highly activated energies, where there's more energy available for transformational experiences. Like that's one of the things you're looking for, because it's the power of the psychic and somatic energies that gets unleashed in non-ordinary states of consciousness, in initiatory rites of passage, and so forth, that permits the depth of transformation that we're looking for. At the same time, the sheer catalyzing of immense energies is not always easy to handle. And so, and after looking at the first set of transits that you're checking out in terms of what's most going to encourage the availability of powerful energies, you then want to look at, well, what transits will be the most likely to bring about a more harmonious encounter with these energies, rather than one that might be more distressingly disorienting or overwhelming, which for one person wouldn't be a problem if they're a seasoned explorer of their own psychological depths through these means. Then this could be a great opportunity, but for somebody else it might not be. So then we look at when the transits would be most likely to be trines, for example, and sextiles, the soft aspects, the harmonious aspects, or also when Jupiter is most likely to be there. And then you also look at the inner planets, which move more quickly, and they coincide with shorter acting archetypal forces that shape like several days at a time, for example, or in the case of the moon, several hours, which can be quite important for the more precise timing of a session, but they're more important in the long run if you see them as their trigger, that we call them triggering transits. They seem to trigger or catalyze the action of longer term outer planet transits that are the especially important ones to be alert to when you're doing this kind of research and checking correlations for what might be the most optimal time for doing this kind of work.
Well, Rick, thank you for that incredibly illuminating exposition on how transits can be optimally timed for non-ordinary state work. Stan, one of the other areas that we talked about discussing today has to do with the relationship between archetypal astrology and what you call coex systems, where we have these layers of condensed experience that accumulate over time. And so how is it that archetypal astrology might point us in the direction of what's of how these coex systems might be getting lit up by a particular non-ordinary experience.
Yeah, just to describe a coex system for people who don't know it, in the early research with psychedelics, I realized that the contents of the unconscious are not sort of lodged in a form of a kind of amorphous mosaic, but that form certain constellations, multi-layer constellations, bring together experiences that have the same kind of emotional charge or same kind of physical sensation, like choking or pain and so on. And these layers come from different periods of that person's life. And then I found out that each of those coex systems is anchored to one of the matrices in birth. You know, birth is such a complex, multi-level kind of experience that there's like a core theme for a number of different coex systems. But then I found out that they actually have deeper layers, which go, let's say, to the karmic realm or to the archetypal realm. Again, sort of bringing together, you know, things that have the same archetypal quality. And then when we looked at the connection to astrology, you can say that you find somehow the archetypal form of that coex as aspects of the natal chart. And then you find out that the different layers are formed at a time when there's a significant transit over that particular thing. So that actually the astrological dynamics is like the common denominator that sort of forges that coex system.
Well, it's fascinating. So I can see how all these different things flow together. We've got the primacy of birth and setting a sort of a trajectory for our life, the influence of the archetypes, the layers of experience, and then the non-ordinary state experience just really opens us up this possibility and all these influences. So it's an amazing new map of possibilities that the two of you have pioneered. That's why we're so grateful for today's call and your life work, but also this is a good time to talk about your upcoming advanced program. So we are blessed that Stan and Rick have agreed to teach this program. Really, this is the first time much of this material has ever been taught in a virtual format. So we're really in for a treat. It's called the Psyche and Cosmos Advanced Program, exploring the frontiers of transformation and healing using archetypal astrology. You can find the details on it at psycheandcosmosadvanced.com. I'll actually spell that out for you since, just to make it clear, is PSYCHEANDCOSMOS advanced.com, psycheandcosmosadvanced.com. And it's really just an extraordinary program. It's going to build on the material that was taught in the recent Cosmos program, which we had great success and hundreds of people from around the world joining to really see the synthesis coming together and to harvest the benefits for their individual own life. So what we've done is opened up the possibility for people who didn't participate in that first Psyche and Cosmos program to basically get that pack as part of a bundle of the offer. So you get access to that full 8-week program that then allows you to build upon that knowledge and go into Psyche and Cosmos Advanced. It's very useful in understanding this map for your work with clients. It's also extremely useful. Many of the modules will cover some of the themes of our collective evolution. This has been a particularly intense year with politically, environmentally, and on many other fronts. We're really hitting a critical crossroads, and you'll hear more about why this is to be expected, if you will, based upon the astrological transits, and also some of the light at the end of the tunnel that as we work our way through. So there's both a personal evolutionary process and there's a collective transformative journey. You're going to get a deep dive into both aspects. So Rick, I'd love for you to start with sharing about who this program is for and what are the topics that you're going to be covering together.
Sure, I'd be happy to give a little indication of that. So the course, this advanced course, is basically our opportunity to share the many of the applications in practical ways, as well as in terms of understanding our larger cultural historical experience, using the expanded understanding of the psyche and archetypal astrology together. And so it's in terms of who this is intended for. Basically, if you have had the experience of like first of all, those of you who may have already taken the foundational course, the eight module telecourse that we completed this fall, that will be the foundation. And but for those new people, you'll have the opportunity, as Stephen has said, to catch up in these next weeks with that 8-week program, and then move into what we'll do beginning in January. And our intention with this advanced course is to look at one field after another, whether it's the arts, literature, film, and music, comedy, poetry, drama, and so forth, and how these, both the expanded psychological and the archetypal astrological perspectives, bring a whole new level of not just understanding, but also even appreciation of what's going on in works of art and in the lives and life work of various major artists. And we'll do the same thing with history, and also we'll look at creativity and higher creativity in individuals' lives and at mystical experience. We'll also look at the particular transits that would be very helpful to know about as one is entering into deep inner exploration. The timing of psychedelic and holotropic breathwork sessions, for example, as we've mentioned, can be really more skillfully timed if you have this information. So on all these fronts, we're really looking at building on the foundation of the knowledge that Stan and I have set out in these opening weeks, and then in the foundation course, and then applying it in all these different fields with greater precision. We'll bring in, and with greater detail, more specifics. I'll give instructions for how to calculate your transits personally, as well as how to have it done by computer. But there's a lot to be said for the relatively simple mathematics operations that are necessary just to calculate it for yourself, and for the interpretation of your transits and natal chart, and then also for the timing of sessions. In all those ways, we're looking forward to expanding, deepening, giving greater detail, a larger range of techniques and concepts that can help one in one's inner work of healing, as well as understanding of human experience.
Well, it's an amazing program. I encourage all of you who are watching to go to psycheandcosmosadvanced.com. That's PSYCHEANDCOSMOS advanced.com, and really give a read through. There's just reading the modules themselves is an eye-opening discovery, looking at things around synchronicity and depth psychology and archetypal astrology and the ethical dimensions of astrologic prediction. There's a whole realm of different insights into how to work with the combination of these two fields in a way that's really most efficacious for you and for other people. So this incredible program begins on January 4th. It's going to run on Thursdays at noon Pacific time. And even if you can't make the live time, we strongly encourage you to go for it, since you still get access to the videos, to the recordings, to all the transcripts. You have all the audio recordings as well, so you can listen at the gym or in the car. And so it really gives you a chance to immerse in this material. There'll be live Q&A time with Stan and Rick, so you can really have your your deepest questions addressed. There's going to be an extraordinary community that forms as well, and so we're really in for an adventure together on this journey. So, Stan, I'd love for you to share in your own words what you're most excited about teaching in this program.
Well, you and Rick have really covered much of what we will be doing. So all I want to say that what will be new somehow in what I contribute is really fully your responsibility, because as you remember, I was doing a 7-week telecourse for Shift Network, and then you asked me afterwards to do one which was 24-week. Now that was a tall order, and I had to really explore new areas, that I have never specifically been interested in or talked about or written. So there will be some of those new aspects. As a result of this module, of this telecourse, which was called Way of the Psychonaut, I'm now working on a book or actually an encyclopedia with 2 volumes of the same title, which I would like to get out next year for the 75th anniversary of the discovery of LSD. So there are quite a few new topics, and in that new book, I'm looking specifically for kind of a information that would be very useful for people who do inner exploration. So there will be quite a few of those topics. We will look also at some of the things I've already written about. We would like to look at, for example, the completely new ways of looking at suicide, the motivation for suicide, the different choices of suicide, including the new form, which is the suicide and murder for some religious motivation. What was known about the kamikaze in the Second World War, and what is happening now with the Muslim Islamic fundamentalists and so on. So those are new areas that really have not been adequately explained or accounted for in psychiatry. So those three new things that it became possible to present some kind of reasonable explanation because of the combination of this large cartography and then the correlation with archetypal astrology.
Well, I know it's an amazing world the two of you can open up. I mean, it covers so much terrain and opens up a whole new level of understanding of ourselves and our world, and so exciting. So I also want to draw people's attention to the fact that there's going to be a number of extra great bonuses for this program. There's one, we have an Abundant Wisdom Q&A collection. This is from video teachings from Stan. These are actually Q&A responses that have been generated and compiled from participant interactions with Stan over the course of many courses at Shift. We also have a PDF collection of handpicked articles from Stan. This is a compilation of very significant papers. We have an audio interview with Linda Graham on the neuroscience of resilience and well-being. And we have 2 audio dialogues with Rick and Caroline Casey, fascinating, brilliant astrologer in her own right. That's called Cosmos and Psyche. And so we've kept the investment very accessible for this, considering it's 17 modules, some of the unprecedented amount of information, and it's just 4 payments of $297, or you save a bit when you bundle that together. That's $1,097. That includes the full 8-week program, which is by itself a $300 value as well. So we found that this it really helps our team and also your journey to register early, particularly in this case because there's the 8-week program that you want to catch up on. So you are familiar with all of the concepts. You really have the foundational insights that allow you to build upon into the advanced work. So when you sign up today, you not only are going to get a jump start, we also are extending a $100 off discount. So this means that the price will drop to $997 or the proportionate with the 4 payment plan, so that you can get registered now, really steep yourself in the 8-week program material, and be prepared on January 9th to begin this amazing new journey to the frontiers of consciousness. So I personally can't say enough about the work of Stan and Rick. Stan has been one of the most seminal mentor figures. He's a true catalyst for some of my deepest transformation. Rick has been a real groundbreaking intellectual and teacher who's opened up a whole new understanding of astrology, which I was very skeptical about. And now I really appreciate both the predictive value and the healing value of using astrology for our deepest explorations. So I encourage you to go to the page at psycheandcosmosadvanced.com. That's PSYCHEANDCOSMOS advanced.com. And give the page a read through. And since you get the $100 discount when you sign up right away, which is today and through December 2nd, when you sign up right away, you're going to get that $100 discount off, and you're going to be able to embark on your journey of Psyche and Cosmos, the first program, and really, be able to steep yourself in that through the month of December. So I encourage you to go to Psyche and Cosmos Advanced, read through all of the details, check out the testimonials, and tune in with your own knowing. And if you get a yes to participating in this groundbreaking program, that we don't know if we'll ever be able to do it again. It's just the first time it's ever been offered, and it's an amazing opportunity to study and learn and transform with two of the great transformative minds of our time. So, warmly welcome you. Hope you can join us. And Rick, anything that we haven't covered about the upcoming program that you'd like to speak to?
I think the only other thing I would mention is just, and I'm just thinking personally of, here we are with, Stan is now 86 years old, and this is a kind of rare opportunity. It's why I decided to take this time to do this telecourse with Stan, because I just don't know if this opportunity will arise again. And by having this be a sustained 18-week advanced course, building on what we've already done, it really gives us the opportunity to cover a lot of territory and get it, recorded and disseminated for an audience beyond what we can reach personally in here in the Bay Area or by traveling. This is just a real opportunity that's my own personal motivation in doing this right now at this time.
Great. Well, I think it's so important that people have this opportunity to go deep with you. It opens the mind, opens the soul, it opens a new paradigm of relating to all of reality. So what a blessing that you've shared your wisdom with us today, and that you both have be sharing the wisdom with all the participants as we go forward. So thank you, Stan and Rick, for an amazing hour together. Thank you for your lifetime of work that's helped us pioneer so many new levels of understanding about ourselves and our world. People are going to be in for a real treat if they join you for the Psyche and Cosmos Advanced program. So just one more time, you can get signed up and get all the information at psycheandcosmosadvanced.com, and you get $100 off when you sign up today. So just go to psycheandcosmosadvanced.com, and we'll look forward to welcoming you in the program with plenty of time to start the new year with a new adventure. So thanks all, and many blessings to you, Stan and Rick, and many blessings to all of you who have joined us.